Do you have a seesaw relationship with debt? Maybe you pay it off, but it always seems to come right back. Or do you feel you're on this hamster wheel and no matter how fast you run, you just never seem to make any real progress or get to where you want to go? And that's exactly how Carla was feeling in her life. But today, things are looking up. In fact, she joined Roots, and in just the last 5 months, you guys, Carla has saved and paid off thousands of dollars. And we invited her on here today to share her journey and what she's been able to do these last few months to get this amazing progress to hopefully inspire you and to liberate yourself from debt once and for all. Stick around.
You're listening to the Debt Free Dad podcast with Brad Nelson. Brad and his co-hosts experience the anxiety of living paycheck to paycheck before learning the fundamentals of financial success. They are now on a mission to empower regular people to pay off their debt for good and enjoy happier, less stressful lives. Keep listening for inspirational interviews, tips, tricks, and practical advice to gain financial freedom.
Hey, welcome to today's show, everyone. I'm Brad Nelson, founder of Debt Free Dad. I paid off about $45,000 of debt, have been debt-free now for more than 11 years outside of my mortgage. And I've also been fortunate enough to help thousands of other people save and pay off tens of millions of dollars with the work that we do here at Debt Free Dad. Now, after listening to this episode, hey, if you want to take your finances a step further, just like Carla's going to talk about on today's show, and you want to get better results with your finances in seriously as little as 30 to 60 days, I'll be sharing some details about that later on in the show for you to get started as well. Carla, welcome to the show. I'm so glad that you were able to take some time and join us today.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. You're busy. you have a busy life, right?
Very much so.
So I'm interested in talking about that because we're going to hit on that because one of a big excuse that a lot of people make is just finding time to work on their finances. Here you got 3 kids, all these pets, you're working 2 jobs, and I think you mentioned you're going to be starting both these jobs pretty full time. And yet you still have managed to make all of this amazing progress and getting out of debt and saving money. So I'm really excited to talk to you a little bit about this today because I know there's going to be some listeners that can resonate with a busy life and how you kind of fit this all in. So, but before we get there, can you just share a little bit of your journey with money and your relationship with money? I know you mentioned, you've done some, debt repair type things and things just didn't work out. But can you kind of share, like as a child, how you learned about it and then how that affected you growing up and how you managed it?
So my parents always taught me to save my money, and I would stash it everywhere. I had it in a drawer, in a jewelry box. In my room, my dad would laugh how, I just had funds everywhere. But I think he kind of cringed. He never really said anything out loud, but I think he cringed whenever there was talk about using a credit card. But I, see my mom sit down once a week, maybe once a month. I don't remember, but, writing out the checks for the bills and, paying everything on time. Once I started working, I had to pay my car insurance if I wanted to drive the family car. And they taught me how to balance a checkbook because there were debit cards back then, which was probably a better thing. And told me how to do my taxes and all that. And so I would have thought with that history that I would have been set up for success. But I think when I got out on my own, credit cards sprinkled in, and I realized now thinking about it that I think the reason I used those credit cards is because I was the saver. I wanted to save the money, but I didn't want to spend it. And
Okay.
credit cards aren't my money, is it? That's what you think,
Yeah,
and
right.
initially I think that's probably how it started.
Okay. That's interesting. And that is an interesting take on that. I have not heard that from many people before, but that is interesting. And I could definitely see how that could happen. So when you're using these credit cards though, like what kind of things were you buying with it that you were maybe more hesitant about using cash for?
Everything. I mean, it would have been groceries. I mean,
Okay.
I was, somebody said one time, I heard, don't use a credit card for something you're not going to have. So buying food with it just didn't make any sense because you ate it, it's gone, and you shouldn't be using it for that. Shouldn't be using them at all. But those were some hints that I'd heard. But everything, New Kids on the Block concerts, real bad. I blame them. I felt like I was behind and I didn't have enough money, but that's because so much of it was going to the credit cards.
Right.
And then it was that vicious cycle where you just don't have the cash, so you put it on a card again because you're paying the card. It's horrible.
Yeah. Now you mentioned in the bio and stuff that you had sent over, you give just kind of a little bit of a brief background of some of the things that you've done to try to get out of debt. Can you talk about some things that you did in the past that maybe worked initially, maybe or didn't work at all? Like what were things that you were trying to, because you obviously realized like I need to fix this. Like I don't like this. So what things did you try but didn't find that really worked for you?
So I got to a point where I would just literally sit and cry when it came time to pay the bills because I didn't know where the money was going to come from. And I realized I had to do something. And this was, gosh, 20 years ago, probably. And my parents were nice enough to take over my car payment and take my car. They gave me one of theirs. So I didn't have a car payment anymore. But then I started searching and I found these credit counseling agencies. And so,
Okay.
you pay them a monthly fee and then they supposedly work with the creditors to bring your interest rate down and so that to help you pay it off. I actually finished all that and I was not debt free. I was credit card free through that. And then just slowly started again. It was called credit counseling, but there was no counseling. They worked with the creditors
Yeah.
to lower your payments and consolidate, if you will, but they never really said, didn't give any hints of how to not use them. Just like, that's what we're doing here.
Yeah. And that's where, I think that's where it's what a lot of the things that are out there, like debt consolidation, credit counseling, even bankruptcy to some degree, it's more or less just a Band-Aid on a wound that you have, and it's the wound that we really need to fix. It's not necessarily a Band-Aid. We need a real solution to fix the wound so we don't have to keep putting Band-Aids on it over and over again. And, I think I resonate with that because I struggle with a lot of the same things too. I did a lot of those types of things and they just didn't seem to work because I never really addressed what the real issue was, which was the habits, the behaviors, the choices, the kind of the mental side of money, the money mindset that I had. It wasn't good, so I definitely can resonate with that. So you joined Roots in October. So as we're recording this, we're kind of almost halfway over, done with March now. So we're talking 5 months ago. Leading up to that point, what was life like? Were you stressed? Were you anxious? And what kind of prompted you to say, you know what, I need to try this? Like, how did you find out about what we were doing?
So a couple things over the past year. I had to get a new car, and I'm not saying that I had to. The frame rusted out and my suspension went up in my frame. So
Oh,
I needed
goodness.
a new
Yeah,
car.
that's not good.
He's a mechanic, but he can't fix that. So I found a car for $5,500, and I walked in and they were like, "You're going to pay cash, right?" And I said, "Nope, I need to finance it because I don't have the 5,000." And that about killed me. I literally realized that I was going to work just to pay these credit cards and the debt, and wanted to change because I wanted to spend more time with my kids. I don't want 2 jobs,
Yeah.
I'm busy as enough. I don't need 2 jobs. So I started actually looking at productivity and decluttering and that kind of thing. Some of these other interests, and a lot of the people that have those podcasts or those blogs or whatever, a lot of those people have actually gone through debt relief. And so I started thinking, well, silly, that's what I need to do. So I literally got on and looked up, paying how to pay off debt, and your podcast popped up, and I started binge listening, and it was the Life Without Payments. I listened to that, and I was like, this makes so much sense. I need more, So it was done deal.
Awesome. So you got started in October. And again, can you share, before we jump into this, I want you to share. So since October, we're talking 5 months. What have you been able to save and pay off in total so far?
In total, I saved and paid off $9,555.76.
Yeah, that's crazy. Would you, looking at that number, would you have believed you'd do that in just 5 months?
No way. No way. I always thought, there was the thought of you have a little bit of extra money, put it toward a credit card. But I thought, even if I have an extra $100 that I got for Christmas, that's not going to put a dent in my debt. So why would I do that?
Yeah.
But it made a big dent.
Yeah.
Starting to throw extra cash toward it. I never believed I'd be able to do that.
Yeah, it's incredible. I mean, you're averaging almost pretty close to $2,000 a month, and the last 5 months to get
Mhm.
almost to nearly 10 grand in 5 months. It's crazy. It's an incredible number. So people, I mean, obviously, like you just said, you can't believe that you did that. So people out there listening to this are like, okay, how the heck did you do it, Carla? Like, what could you do? Because I want to do it too. So can you share like maybe things you did in Roots, or maybe things that we taught you in Roots, or was it the accountability? Like what do you feel over these last 5 months has really pushed that for you the most, you think?
I'd already started a little bit of a budget, but I've never really worked on a budget, and I still suck at doing the budget. But that was a huge thing. Is just really putting the money where it goes before it gets there, so that. And I've always kind of done like a direct deposit. As soon as the check hits, it goes to another account so that it's gone and I don't see it. The other thing was just behavior. If anything good came out of COVID, it was curbside pickup for
Oh yeah.
groceries. It's the best thing. I literally sit down and I probably spend a good 2 hours going between the couple different stores that I do. I still, go to some of the wholesale clubs and still stay within my budget very, very well. And it's pretty tight. Um, but that was a huge thing because I no longer have the kids, oh, I want this and I want that in the store. And plus, I'm also not, seeing shiny things that
Right.
I need. So it's saved a lot for doing
Yeah.
the pickup groceries and just behavior in general. I really avoid going into stores.
For sure. I think that's some of the easiest advice I've ever given somebody is that they say like, "Well, how do I stop spending money?" Well, just stop going shopping. and it's some
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
it's
and
that easy
using
sometimes.
yeah, and using cash too. I've always used my debit card, and I thought, okay, that's fine. You're paying attention, but it doesn't hurt. Like you said, it does not hurt using the debit card
Yeah.
nearly as much as when you break your last 20. It's just, I could have done
Yeah.
without that,
So I
So it's a
so I
big
wa I wanna
difference.
talk a little bit about that. So you moved over to more of cash. What types of things did you start paying cash for that you used to paying like a debit card or a credit card with? Was like everything?
Just like I mean, I try. Pretty much the only thing that really goes on a debit card that I really, really try to, is like gas and groceries because you
Yeah.
have to pay online or you have to pay at the pump. Other than that, like if I have to stop and pick up something for crafts for kids for school, or you know, they need a pair of shoes, or it's those things that it's just that daily spending. Especially, I don't completely stay out of fast food. I do that every once in a while. I did decrease that quite a bit. But that kind of stuff, you have to run into the store for, you know a loaf of bread and,
Yeah.
some milk. Use the cash just because you see it going out. And I actually also will, um, only take a certain amount of money into the store,
Love it.
so I don't have
Yeah.
a choice to buy only what I went
Yeah,
in for.
cash is such a
So,
great I mean, I know, we're going to such a cashless system, and I get it, but there's cash is such a great accountability tool. It really, really is, and I don't
mhm,
use it quite as much as I used to, but when I first started getting it, I was the same way as you. I used it for just about everything because I was so bad with my behavior. I would mess up my budget all the time with credit cards or debit cards. It's like I gotta put a stop to it, and that's how I retrained my brain was just using cash. So, I love that.
yeah.
As I mentioned, you've got 3 kids, you've got all these pets, you're working these 2 jobs, you're very busy, and you still have made this incredible progress. How did you manage to, like, fit all this in? Because time is a big thing that we hear. It's not, it's not typically, I have too much debt or I don't have enough income. For most people, what keeps them stuck is just putting the time and effort in, and here you are, you've done it, and you have a very busy life. So can you offer any advice that you've done that's worked for you throughout this process?
Um, I try to do it daily. I probably don't get to it daily, but as much as I can after the kids go to bed, just sit down, look over the bank statements. I obviously have the business as well, so I'm always in the bank app,
Yeah.
checking things and seeing what's gone through, etc. So that's just the biggest thing. It's just to sit down, look at the bank. That's the big one. I think it's just to see what's going through and make sure everything is going where it needs to go automatically and what's left. Um, the budget, again, like I said, I'm still working on that. The sinking funds, I'm trying to do that. I know where I need them. I'm just not getting there as much as I need to. Um, I have sometimes I don't always cash my check that I get from our shop. on time. So, so it's a little bit not always the same every month. So it makes it a little bit more difficult for the budgeting. But that's pretty much it. Just you have to make the time
Yeah.
to sit down and just look at it. It doesn't take long. Once you get it settled, get your budget set and your calendar set for the month. And the calendar is great because you can check off everything and see everything's right in front of you. Shouldn't be any
Yeah.
surprises.
You had mentioned
So,
with some of the things that you tried in the past that there was no real counseling or coaching to really kind of help you work through some of the challenges that you were having with managing your money. Obviously, in Roots, a big thing that we do, especially here at Debt Free Dad, is we put a lot of focus on accountability and support. So can you talk about over the last 5 months, the stuff that
mhm.
we do here inside Roots, how that's helped you through that counseling that you were looking for and that you needed, whether it be from us or the program or even just the community in general that we have?
Yeah, so just started listening to the podcast initially and just hearing the stories of other people and how they've gone through everything and how they paid stuff off. Because you listen to the very beginning, this person paid off this much, and then the
Yeah.
first question is
Yeah.
how, right? So, and then the other part of it was I've always been taught not to really, talk publicly about money, and you keep it to yourself. It's private, da da da. And so, not many people know. Now they do, but they don't really know about the debt. And it's because of it's
Yeah.
kind of embarrassing. But to have the Roots community to get on there and be like, look, guys, I'm struggling this week. This is this and that, and everybody's cheering you on, and you can do it. So you slipped up, big deal, jump back in, and it's just that's been an
Yeah. Well,
amazing
I
part
think
of
you
it.
you hit it on the head with the embarrassment. I think a lot of us have felt that way. I have felt that way. I think a lot of people that we work with feel that way, and we can kind of tend to put ourselves on this island like we're the only ones that mess this up or that we're struggling. And the reality is the majority of people, the majority of us are living paycheck to paycheck. The majority of people are struggling with the same types of struggles. But like you pointed out, Carla, a lot of us just don't talk about it. And I think that's the cool part about our community and being able to open up and have a safe place to get support, have a safe place to celebrate your wins and be open about it because it can be a very shameful topic and you can keep it to yourself and that can eat at you over time. So talk a little bit about,
Exactly.
your husband and your kids. How did this go with them? What you started listening to this show? Did you talk to your husband? Be like, hey, listen to this guy. Like, what was his thoughts originally?
I was late one night when I was listening to the Debt Without Payments, or
Yeah, life without payments.
the
Yeah,
payment, and I didn't want to think twice. I think he'd already gone to bed or something. He wasn't home, and I thought I'm not even going to talk to him about it. I'm just going to do it because I didn't want to think about it too much. I know that sounds weird, but I didn't want to have a discussion and have him change my mind. And it was funny because just last night we were talking about me coming on the podcast, and he said, I've been listening to you because and he's like, I'm getting it. So I mean, we're not doing it together, and I don't want to say that in a bad way. I
yeah,
know that should be the goal, but a lot of my
yes,
debt I came with.
right.
It's not his debt, so I don't think it's fair for him to have to pay for it. But he's very supportive, and he's
Yeah,
picking it
I
up.
love that. And that's one of the ways to do it. Like if you have a spouse or partner that's reluctant to working on your finances, has a hard you maybe have a hard time communicating. It's just like just turn on our podcast or turn on another financial, just turn it on. And it's amazing the
Mhm.
conversations that will begin to happen because it's a third party person inside your relationship. And you can now talk about what that person's saying instead of the finger pointing back and forth. So I love that he's picking it up.
Exactly.
That's so awesome. What about your kids? Did they notice anything different about you doing things different or how you're handling or talking about money?
If they say, "Hey, can we get something?" I'll just tell them I didn't bring in money for that today. And they're becoming more accepting of it. I try not to say we don't have money for that because I'm trying not to
Yeah.
lay that ground for them. But just saying, I'm sorry, I didn't budget for that today. And I said, do you know what a budget is? My daughter, she's 7. She's like, Mom, I know what a budget is.
With all that attitude, I'm sure too, right?
When she was in kindergarten last year, they actually had a project where they had to learn they had this much money and they had to put this much aside for a car or not car payment, something like that, and a place to live and a place for food, and then you have this much left, and then do you want to make money with that, or do you just want to have a job and you get money?
That's
In
incredible. That's actually
kindergarten,
really good.
and so
Yeah, that's awesome.
that was cool. Mhm.
So how are you feeling now versus 5, 6 months ago? Big difference, stress levels, anxiety, worry, like where are you at now with that?
It's absolutely amazing. My stress level is so
Yeah.
so decreased. I feel so much freer, and I literally who wants to pay their bills, but I'm actually excited to sit and pay the bills because I'm actually trying to challenge myself as to how
Yeah.
fast I can get this done. Because I put into some calculators and it says, I think it said like 2027, and I'm like,
Yeah.
we're doing it faster than that. So um, it's so refreshing. And I mean, just looking at the numbers is
Yeah.
amazing. I
Yeah,
just
it's
never dreamed.
it almost becomes, a lot of people have said it's odd that it has almost become, it gets addicting because you start to win, start to get progress. I mean,
Hmm.
you've built your emergency fund, you're seeing your check marks off on your debts, and you see the level going down. It's all of that creates that amazing momentum that we want to create, and you're feeling that. And like we tell everyone, it's like you're going to feel a lot better sooner than you think. And here you are, just 5 months later, and you feel completely different. It's
Hmm.
incredible. If you had to go back and give the same person you 6 months ago advice on getting started or getting off the fence, like what would you say to them knowing what you know today based on what you've learned over these last 5 months or so?
I know that everybody says just do it, but the numbers don't lie. Um, you just have to jump in, and everybody thinks, oh, I don't, if I don't have the money to pay the bills, why, should I pay for this? But it's worth it. It's just the stress level and the community, the support. It's just so worth it. And even though I paid off, I don't remember how much it was back then with that credit counseling agency, but it took years, multiple years, and it might for some people still, but I've
Yeah.
I've gotten this far already. You just have to you just have to jump in and do it. It's just so much better to when you learn the hints like the budgeting, the sinking funds. I never thought of that. Never thought about sinking funds. Um to the hints to get you to spend your money differently so that you're not relying on those credit cards. It's just information that I never knew,
It's
never come
amazing
across.
the different results you can get when you start doing things differently than you always have, and you're proof of that. And
Mhm.
man, Carla, saving and paying off nearly $10,000 in 5 months, you got a lot to be proud of. I'm proud of you. That takes a lot of change, a lot of hard work, especially with your
Thank
busy
you.
life. So congratulations to you. I appreciate you coming on and sharing a little bit of your journey with us here today. And I'm really excited to see where you're going to be at the end of this year, because I have a feeling you're going to be far better off even 9, 10 months from now. It's going to be pretty cool.